You need back into the little room?
Yeah. We are.
What fun. But a new bulletin board.
Yeah, I think I can't remember what's going on with it. I think they forgot to order the legs.
He hired somebody to hold it up.
How we doing?
Well, everything.
So far, so good. I think we're having a presentation today?
I don't think so.
Oh, not for planning commission?
Today is planning commission.
Yeah, this is presentation by TJ Duluth.
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't see this.
I don't know who CPS is. I didn't get the dictionary on acronyms.
Well, if there was a dictionary with just acronyms in it,
There would be,
it'd be,
Protective services.
is it CPS, child protecting?
Is this being recorded already?
Oh, it might have been.
So where do we have to sit out there for visiting?
Nope.
Where do we?
do we have assigned seating here? Oh, look at that, they made a placard already.
Get you a chair. I'm sure you were chopped.
I was, bro. If I'm slow enough, you'll get
Can I
it.
sit in the back?
You can sit wherever you want. Yeah, you want to sit just right over. Sure. Hi, Brian. I'm Melanie. I'm I'm the staff at planning.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
I lived up here. I went to Europe and like actually saw it in like a beer store and I was blown away. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah, no, the kids
It's like
got the
real.
shirt for me at the Simpsons land and
Cool.
More chairs?
Well, yeah, I don't, sure. Not a lot, maybe like 3 more because I don't think that many people are gonna show up. So don't have that many to put away.
there you go.
Work harder, not smarter.
Oh, man, I tell you what.
So it's not putting all out though, so I don't think there's something that we can go. Let's just do it.
No.
I just wait a minute.
IDs.
Mark is up there. These guys together. Thanks, one of these guys.
Turn them all facing the walls.
Exactly, so time out, so we can see. Exactly. Gotcha.
Right.
They're gonna stop in 5 minutes.
Oh.
I can, like.
Oh, ding dong, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit on the end so I can pop my foot up.
Okay. I'll move over here, I just wanted to. Yeah.
Good, how are you?
So far, so good.
You're important sitting there.
Do I?
Mhm, you do.
Oh, man. I feel very unimportant today.
Hey, you're sitting right next to the clerks, that's like the.
I've had the opposite of the mighty touch.
At least you know how to tell time.
Yes, sir.
Wait, are you referencing somebody or?
Some of this,
Someone who maybe came in around, let's say.
2 hours ago?
Yeah, 1 o'clock.
well, see, it's 1300 then,
Okay.
military time, so.
Blame it on the military time.
Mhm.
I see how it goes. Hey, Jerry.
Maybe.
Get it? Gonna hobble over. I did.
When do you start recording? Like at 4? Or 3?
We're recording now because I wanna get this set up so that I don't get the echo that I normally do when I take. But it's recording, I'll just edit. This part.
See, I do. Don't ever trust. Uh-oh.
She's been wondering what's going on in these meetings, so I decided to bring her in,
You
but
know-
find out for herself.
My wife told me I should bring my dog, and I says, no, because then I would spend all the time trying to coerce the dog.
There's somebody blocking me.
Who's, what did you just call me?
Somebody.
Said somebody,
Yeah, I
didn't
know,
say,
yeah.
yes,
I'm not just somebody,
I know.
here,
Chuck,
That's all.
I wanted to have a step for
I'm sorry.
people that might trip.
Because they're older.
Yeah.
How we doing, sir? Good, good, good.
Is that the infamous drawing that you had?
I'm sorry?
Is that your infamous drawing?
Yes. Sure.
Should work.
Here's some homework, right?
Thank you, sir.
Just stuff we've been talking about, the last 2 sessions.
Yes, sir.
So where's second?
Second Street is here. Then it drops over to here like that. And this is University Avenue. I didn't know we had that. This is Chicago.
Okay.
This is Hartford. So Third Street goes down like this.
So Second Street, necessity
Most
question.
planning commissions, for one reason or the other, have left you with.
No, I wouldn't fill that at all, you're literally a cast.
I don't know what the hell that means.
That's probably Giroux. But this is,
Because it goes further and kind of.
and this is, I think this is 1887. Yeah, 1887 plan.
Okay.
And so this should be, anyway, this is her here. Oh, yeah, Grape Creek, right here, Grape Creek Road, that stops. There used to be a railroad here.
Yeah.
This is right behind my house.
And there's the Y turner, used to be there.
So I'd like to get this included in our plan, our town plan.
Let's see if we can figure out.
Wasn't
Did you-
there a
did you find-
Lincoln? What? Wasn't there a Lincoln Street?
Well, there's Grape Creek Avenue.
Hello, sir.
Great, and then this
There's
was
Hafford,
And this is
Chicago.
Chicago?
And I don't know what this is, University. but
Maybe
this
this
is-
one,
Yeah, I don't know what the current.
because I think I have a piece of paper that talks about Lincoln.
This is a plat I've got from 1887. And it was on file at the county, and so we got it. But this is Second Street here, current Second Street, and this is Hermit. It was called Grape Creek Avenue at that time. And the railroad came through here, so it stopped at the railroad, but then it drops down here like this.
Hey, Melanie, do you?
Chicago
agenda?
Avenue. Now,
Agenda?
Yeah.
I
Just
think
the agenda or
Chicago
the
Avenue,
packet.
oh, it drops over here, so it dropped up this way.
I have, but I can,
I'll take the whole thing.
you want to print it out?
Yeah.
You got it.
Anyway.
Much in.
I didn't-
I don't think there's any.
Yeah.
Paul, is that a copy of it, what you have?
I don't have a copy. I'm gonna make some though. Because I thought we had a copy machine here at one point, but no.
We always go to the county and use their.
I've got one. I've got a machine at work and I'll make a few copies. Does the board need, does the committee need a copy?
Not for this meeting.
Yeah, but not for this meeting, but I'll make 3 or 4 more copies.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good
Yeah,
idea.
okay.
You can even digitize it somehow. I don't know if the county has that capability for something that big.
I'll see if your
copy machine will do that.
Yeah, I'll see if we can do that. Our copy machine is relatively new.
It's gonna be a digital copier, just whether or not it'll move it to a computer or not.
Happy haircut.
Huh?
It was a solstice trimming.
This,
Yes,
this is my preferred state. I just am lazy and don't,
especially in the summertime.
well, anytime.
Paul, you said that plan is from 1887,
Yes,
the year before you were born?
yes. Thank you very much.
Really. You know, we can't have you removed, Jerry.
Right.
Oh,
He has
we
protection-
can't.
he has protection now.
Not with your dog, okay.
So does this mean I can bring all 5 of my dogs up there?
You can bring as many as you want. I got 2. I'll give you my dogs.
No. We're hoping that attrition will slowly get us
Is,
down.
is
to
your
a
dog's one of the ones that barks at 3 a.m. in that direction from me?
No, at 3 in the morning, they're inside.
You probably hear Donna Hood's dogs here at 3 o'clock.
I know my,
She has 3 of them.
my neighbors used to, until I got on their case. Bad.
What, the last page printed out weird, I don't know.
That's good enough.
Is it, okay, anybody else wanna?
Yeah.
I'll put it up on the.
Okay,
Uh-oh, I got my glasses.
it's the hammer. Ms. Wisely called the meeting to order at 3:03. And pledge is next, yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Melanie?
Chairman Van Dorn,
I'm here.
Mr. Yago,
Present.
Mr. Lund,
Present.
Mr. Winky,
Present.
Mr. Clint.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We have a full house.
We have a full house.
That's great. Recognition of visitors, if you just want to state your name and where you live, even though we know all of you.
Peter, 409 South Fifth.
Good.
Pam Oots, 501 County Road 324.
Nadine Peterson, 312 South Fourth.
Thank you for coming. Do we have minutes to approve?
We do, I would like to put them in here, when we do it next.
Yeah, are
They're ready.
they minutes for a workshop?
No, we don't do minutes for workshop, but it would have been from May. I have them, I just didn't put them in the packet for some reason.
We'll pick that up later.
Thank you, sorry about that.
Old business is none. New business is, I had invited TJ, who is on the team doing our update for our housing needs assessment. And TJ had interviewed me here to learn a little bit more about what's going on with planning and zoning in West Cliff. And we had an interesting conversation because there's a lot going on in planning and zoning right now. And TJ is probably, he hit a accident on his way here. He was not in the accident, but it did delay him. So he's gonna be here about 20 minutes late. But I wanted to kind of summarize what we've been discussing for the last 2 workshop sessions, especially for the benefit of Brian, who's walking into this brand new, and he's gonna hear some things that just don't make any sense at all to him.
That's standard.
That's standard. And I don't, you've been a trustee before, so this isn't your first rodeo here in this room. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we've been doing We had started, in a very innocent way, we thought we'd update the zoning map, and make sure it was accurate. In the process of doing that, we uncovered quite a few things that, we didn't realize were there. Or weren't there. So we started kind of digging in and looking, at things like, I wanted to know how many vacant single-family lots and commercial industrial lots that were in town that had already had sewer and water service. So there's 177 vacant single-family lots in town. We also looked at, there are two categories of our current zoning that allow for more than one dwelling per lot. And that's traditional neighborhood and multifamily. There are 0 vacant lots that are traditional neighborhood or multifamily. There are 26 vacant commercial and industrial lots that have water and sewer to them. There's quite a few more that don't. And those are building out very slowly. We're looking at the build. If we looked at the build rate for our 177 vacant lots, it's maybe a 40-year supply based on our 25-year history of builds, average builds. So pretty healthy supply for single-family lots. The vacant commercial and industrial lots are building out extremely slowly. And one of the reasons they're building out slowly is kind of a chicken and the egg thing. We don't have the right policies in place to house the workers that might be hired for a commercial build or an industrial build. Right. And I think we all know we have a workforce housing problem. It's a cash buyer's market. If we look at our vacant lots and what it costs to build right now, what it costs for a lot, and what it costs for a water and sewer hookup, it's in north of $120,000 income required to qualify for 20% down loan. So we don't have jobs in town that support that kind of income. So really what we've got is a cash buyer's market. Yeah. And you know, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that. We're seeing mostly retired folks moving their equity from wherever, but a lot of those are coming from the front range and just paying cash, or paying cash even to buy a lot and build a home. Our current multifamily zoning makes very little sense. And I'll give you an example. The zoning or the lot size required for a traditional neighborhood is a little over 6,000 square feet. Two of the 25 by 150 foot lots. And you can build up to 6 dwelling units on that lot, which would be difficult to do on a lot that size, actually. And then for multifamily, it doubles the lot size to over 12,000 square feet, but you can still only build 6 dwelling units on it. Just doesn't make any sense. Neither one of them make much sense. The current, actually, many of our current zones are based on that original Clifton Company plat that was done, at least in the first phase of it in 1880. That's, you can see the plat up on the wall here. You know, before the age of the automobile, obviously. And what we have now is a town that was platted in 1880 primarily, surrounded by planned unit developments. And if you look at that map, that's what you see. You see this horseshoe of planned unit developments around that central core, kind of in the purple, red color and blue color, that is comprised of those small lots, 25 by 150, that were laid down by Dr. Bell and associated with the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad. That's something we share with Salida. They were originally platted by Dr. Bell and the railroad as well. So what does that mean? We've got these, we're surrounded by this horseshoe of planned unit developments that we approved and signed off on their development plan. Even though in almost every case, the developers are long gone, they've sold their lots, made their profit, whatever. Those agreements still have force of law. And as a result, we have 6 different single-family zones because of the PUDs, and they vary by setback, they vary by maximum building height, they vary by lot size, and minimum home size. They're all different. I don't think have been recognizing that when we do plan checks. In fact, I'm pretty sure we haven't. I got a little smile from Melanie there.
Because I thought our setbacks and everything was defined by ordinance.
It's defined by ordinance, but our ordinance basically turns out only, for the most part, not in every case, but for the most part, only applies to that historical plat dating
So
back.
if they conflict, then does one override the other?
No,
The local wins.
the local wins, so the PDUs, even though most of them are inactive, they still have force of law.
Okay.
Example, we recently passed a accessory dwelling unit code. That only applies to the historical district because all of those PUDs say you will only have one dwelling per lot. And so we can't override that without going through a process. Looking at all this and going through this over the last 2 months or so, this is what I think will need to be done. We need to activate all the residential PUDs except Mission Plaza that has a mandatory POA. So they're kind of controlling their own destiny there. They didn't dedicate the roads to us. They didn't dedicate their open space to us. They're charging their residents or property owners an annual fee to maintain the roads and whatnot, and then all their CCNRs and all their
How does that work
development.
with property taxes? They still pay the same.
They
amount?
still pay property taxes, yeah,
Oh, so nothing is.
yeah, and we don't give any back to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Curious.
So,
Well, except we maintain the roads.
yeah, well, we don't maintain them unless they pay us to do that. They own their roads, they own everything.
But they're taxed.
Just Mission Plaza owns the road.
Only Mission Plaza.
The rest of them, though, we do take care of.
The rest of them we do take care of, but we looked, I'll give the example of Shadow Ridge. There's nothing in our files that said they ever dedicated the open space and roads to us.
Okay, so that's not by force of law then, that we take care of.
But we have been.
I understand.
So,
there's a precedence.
Yeah.
But that precedence was based on at least some kind of understanding that they would turn over.
I looked through the minutes from 2002, just to be clear, and all the way up to, I don't know, 2020 or something like that. I couldn't find anything where they dedicated it to us. I heard a rumor that it was a handshake deal of some sort, but I can't find anything in the
Well, yeah,
minutes or any
well,
kind of
that
That
documentation.
doesn't count for
We,
squat.
I was on the board when that happened,
Okay,
and we passed a subdivision ordinance before that was built. My development out south and Mission Plaza was done before that new, subdivision ordinance was passed. So they had to meet the rules of the ordinance with paved streets, curb gutter, et cetera. I don't know whether it was necessary for them to dedicate those streets to us once we made those requirements, they met those requirements. So, I don't know, I mean, we have a subdivision ordinance that governs it. And, so the question is, do they even have to bother to turn it over to us?
what I found in the minutes was a motion saying that they did not have to meet the sidewalk requirements.
Exactly, I remember that.
Yeah, so that's the only thing that I could find.
I don't want to get into the weeds on that because we will get into the weeds eventually on that. I had discussions with Clay, before Clay left us. And there is a process for us to deactivate the PUDs. Ideally, in talking to TJ, he said that should be written into our PUD policy, but there's no exit plan in that policy. And no way to go back and change that. But there is a process that we'll need to go through to deactivate those and get back control so that we can make changes to zoning that also applies to them. So I just want to go through a few more of these things. I'm pretty certain that we don't have the right mix of single-family, multifamily, commercial. And TJ, just about wrapping it up here. We don't have the right mix. We have created those zones piecemeal over the decades and never stood back and say, is this the right mix? So we're gonna have to take a look at that. I think after the dust settles and we deactivate the PUDs, we're gonna have 3 or 4 different single-family zones. Because we've got areas, small lot areas like the historical area and big lot areas like Shadow Ridge, and they're gonna have to have different requirements. We're gonna need an updated multifamily zone. We're probably gonna need an updated mixed use zone. And we're probably gonna have to take a look at our off-street parking policy that is excessive by today's standards in terms of the number of parking spaces required and is contributing to the affordability problem in the town. And just to finish up here, it's going to take legal advice and guidance to activate the PUDs and take back control of our town's future. So that's probably going to require some public meetings with the residents of the various PUDs to talk about, what it's going to look like afterwards. I think, in my opinion, it's going to take professional planning and zoning input to put things back in order and adjust our policies to support housing choice and future growth and affordable housing and affordable workforce housing, more importantly. Because a lot of what we have in our policy right now is getting in the way and causing driving costs up for housing. So with that in mind, after I met with TJ and he interviewed me in association with the new housing needs assessment, I asked him if he would come and speak to the planning commission and just talk about, well, he's going to talk about planning and zoning 101, just going to give us an overview. He's the one that made me aware that DOLA has a model municipal code for planning and zoning that we can use as a guideline. He actually was on the team that developed that. So I asked him what we should be concerned about in terms of using that model code. He said it was never meant to be adopted wholesale by the town. It was meant as a guide so that you could look at an individual need like multifamily housing or parking, and it would give you a starting point to develop your own policy around those particular zoning categories. And I've run out of things to say, TJ, so.
We're gonna set TJ up right over there. He sent me a PowerPoint.
Put
So-
them up on the screen then?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Yep.
And for those of you visitors, you might want to turn your chairs around so you can see TJ's slide deck. And your dogs around.
It might reach all the way across. Put that in and
And it
it
looks
keeps.
like, okay, yeah, sure.
Let's do this.
He just downloaded the entire town.
It's all.
And uploaded a virus. Oh, shoot, I hope not.
See if it works.
Okay, TJ, you've got the floor.
Is it working? Do you want me, you could just like, just give me and I'll.
That's all right, yeah, there's, should be okay, and what I'll try to do, if it's all right, if you don't mind, sir, maybe you can just go just a scooch that way. That way I'm not too invasive in your personal space, but I can, oh, hey, Pam.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
How far back there you go?
Oh, just there, and I'll stand here in the corner, that way you can kind of see me, and everybody can. All right, so sorry.
Take a breath.
It's a beautiful drive. Correct, and I heard there was a bad wreck over this way, that's not the one that I was behind, but did hit a couple on the way here. It's the first time that's ever happened, so. All right, well, good evening, everyone. No, afternoon, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I've had the pleasure to talk to John a couple of times, off and on over the last month or so, about where you all as a town are on the planning spectrum. And I'm gonna try to bring it up a little bit and kind of give hopefully a little bit of context from my perspective of, you know, what to think about while you're going down this path. So I apologize that some of it might be too elementary, some basics, but I do believe that you might be where you're at is everybody might be at a different understanding. So when I come into situations like this, I try to say, hey, let's create a baseline knowledge of understanding upon which to build off of, okay? So my hope is to get through my slides in about 10 to 15 minutes. And then open it up for discussion. Those who potentially know me, I can talk for hours on this, so you're gonna have to shut me up at some point. But let me go ahead and say it's still not. No.
Do you want
All right. Oh, it's okay, I get it. Oh,
Melanie what?
oh, that's the one. Oh, that's not the right one.
Okay, just,
Um,
go back. Let me go.
That's all right, that's the one I just sent. That's all right.
Okay.
Oh,
Is there something else attached?
no, that's probably the one. It's, so go ahead down to the objectives and we'll start there.
Okay.
What doesn't have on there is some lovely things about who I am. And why am I here? Who's this guy? So my company is Community Planning Strategies, CPS. We're based out of Silverthorne. And our specialty is what we call community development services. That means that anything that an in-house staff would do, me and my team do. So we do current planning, long-range planning, development review. We do on-call services, which means we answer the phone when the residents call. So we know what it's like. We're zoning administrators. We also do the long-range planning, comprehensive planning, land use code updates, and everything in between. I think that our specialty is that we excel at the $10,000 to $20,000 project range, not the big $100,000 project, right? There are big firms that do that. We can do it, don't get me wrong. I'd love to take that kind of money. But for a lot of communities, you don't need that kind of effort. You just need to move the needle a little bit, get community buy-in on certain things, and start building that momentum. So what we do is look at incrementalism. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today, hopefully, that where you're at is a really good spot in that evaluation stage. But let's make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for, I don't want to say failure. You're not setting yourselves up for failure. Make sure that we're looking at all the options, all the opportunities from day one, right? And not missing something. Yeah, so I had just a couple pictures of ourselves. So maybe that's better that you don't. We are a team of 7, and we do this with currently 13 communities around the state of Colorado, in addition to doing projects. So, you go to the website and we are the zoning administrator, the town planners, if you will, for those communities. So again, this is our bread and butter. This is what we excel at. All right, land use planning. Back to the basics. Next slide, please. Mine are all out of whack. All right, so what is planning? Everybody has a different definition of what planning is and is not. I believe in our approach is that planning is a process. The process through which alternatives are identified, evaluated, and actions are taken. Okay, so it could be on anything. And when it comes to land use planning in particular, community engagement is absolutely essential. You're dealing with personal property rights, you're dealing with people's views, their enjoyment of property. And so understanding where they're coming from, what their input is very important. And making sure that there's community buy-off on what we're doing is absolutely essential. And I will say, coming in and hearing some of the great stuff you're doing, this is probably my biggest concern. That what you're doing is probably great, but does the community buy off on it? And I think that's a fair question, right? Doesn't mean you're not doing great things, but if the community doesn't come along, they're not going to support the project that you want to do, right? Next. Oh, interesting. Could you open it up with Google Slides? Because there's some animation.
Okay, let me try. Give me a second.
Because that doesn't really tell you anything, does it?
Here we go. That's sticky, okay.
There we go.
Make it bigger.
Yep, and then you could probably do, slideshow.
Yeah. Sorry, part of my Zoom stuff's in the way, I can't see everything.
Oh, yeah.
And then the
There it is.
pressure's on,
I know.
And it's the wrong share screen, right?
Beats
Ooh,
us.
I wonder, maybe
maybe
You might
this
be
will
able
work then.
to do it now.
Okay, got it.
Pressure's off.
Where does planning, land use planning, from a municipal standpoint, start and end? It starts all the way at the beginning of comprehensive planning, high-level planning, visioning, goal setting, all the way down to enforcement, weed enforcement, abandoned vehicle enforcement, building without a permit enforcement, and everything in between. It is not a linear process, but for simplicity's sake, we try to use this linear process to identify kind of that process. What we're gonna be talking about today are just right here, right? And so we're only gonna be touching the surface. It's not even that, it's kind of even further to the left of that, but this just gives you an idea visually of that whole thing, and I hope I'm not explaining, hopefully none of this is anything that you haven't seen already or been working through. So I'm gonna go through these pretty quick here, but long-range planning, right? It's your comprehensive plan. It's your vision. Usually has a 20, 30 year vision planned out. It is a guiding document, a blueprint. Who here has built a home without blueprints? Probably not. Oh, well, touche. Most people who are not as talented,
Crazy.
don't build a town, a community without a plan, right? A blueprint for it. Same thing. That's what it's doing. It's setting your goals, setting your milestones, setting your policies and what you want to attain. It is aspirational. One thing that's out there, pros and cons to it, but a land use master plan, comprehensive plan, is not a fiscally constrained document. That's important because it doesn't mean that it has to be constrained to funding availability. The idea, let's see if it's my next slide. Nope, darn it. The idea is that it gets you set up for funding, and we'll get to that in a minute. Then you have current planning. Current planning is your development review. It's your zoning map. It's that document right there. That is law, right? You have your plan that's aspiration, goal-oriented. Then you have your zoning map and the regulations that go with it that are law. Those include dimensional standards, height, setback, lot size. Subdivision regulations, where do your accesses come from? Where do your utilities come from? Development review, what process do you go through in order to review and approve or deny, right? Or evaluate a request against those established laws. And then enforcement. Enforcement, of course, who's heard this, right? What's the point of having a law if you can't enforce it? Very true. And this is a cycle because as you start enforcing, right, the quintessential example is if you get variances for building height all the time, building height's not wrong, your codes are wrong, right? So you always have to be evaluating that. I think that's what you're doing right now, right? You're in that process of saying, hey, the market, the community, the needs right now are in multifamily, some higher density. Okay, didn't get anything thrown at me. It's somewhat of a safe word. So let's look at the map and see where that is, right? Because that, if you're not getting that, it's not a problem with your with the market. It's a problem with the map and reflecting those, right? So I applaud you for doing that. Now we got to go back up to the top. So comprehensive plan, what is it? We already mentioned it sets goals, it sets the vision. I have not read through your master plan, your comprehensive plan right now, but from what I've talked to some individuals about, is it's a good document, but it doesn't really provide the community buy-in and community vision. That may be safe to say.
That's correct.
Wait a minute. When we did the comprehensive plan, we had community meetings. People attended. Now, did everybody in the community attend? No, but I mean,
Yeah.
enough people. So
Okay.
we got their input. So, if they didn't attend, don't know about it, it's not because we didn't try, but many people did attend. There was, Ryan, do you remember that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so we did have community buy-in.
It's easier to complain after the fact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, it is. 100. So there were community meetings that were talked about. And so then at that time, potentially 2018, right, was the plan?
Yes.
And I'm not suggesting that's changed.
It-
Well, it obviously has to some
It
extent.
was recently updated, the meetings were noticed. Public could come if they wanted to. But in my opinion, I think what was missing is at some point in the process, we needed to have a town hall and say, this is what we're thinking, we'd like your feedback.
And no matter what, this is not a slight criticism at all. You never do as much as is needed, and you can always do more from a community engagement standpoint. At some point, though, you do have to cut the line and be like, hey, we did it, we did what we need to, and we're moving forward. So it sets your growth management. Now, that's, the state's coming down now with, you can't manage growth in different ways, but it says, here's who we want to be in the future, and here's how we're growing, here's where we're growing. It guides your decision-making. Does anybody here have the master plan in front of them while they're making land use decisions with this body? Someone asked me a little bit ago, we just kicked off a comp plan in Olathe, out west. And I said, what's success mean to you? I was like, well, nobody's turned the table on me. But success to me, from a comprehensive plan standpoint, is, are you all sitting there with it? Is it helping you make day-to-day decisions? Is it helping your board make decisions? That's what you want, right? Not a plan just sitting on the shelf. The big one, this is the big one. It gets you set up for grant funding. Every single grant application, right, says, does your community buy into this? Was there a public process that, supports this project or this effort or this application? That's the main goal of a comp plan. And then this last one too, it's kind of, a small one potentially, and it's kind of underlying, but it builds confidence and trust in your government, especially in this day and age, right? We have so much mistrust, misunderstanding, that this document you can point to and say, this is what we as a community bought into. We talked about, this is where we're going, and our decisions are based on. Yeah, so it's a way to be more transparent in that decision. So the rule of thumb is when you have a comp plan, so we'll get to this too, but this body, the Planning Commission, is the one that in the state of Colorado is charged with managing, updating, and administering the master plan for the town. This group should be looking at that every 2 years. I suggest to our communities that they do a work session in the middle of summer when it's kind of a little slow and evaluate the comp plan to say, hey, is it still relevant? Keep up on it. And then you do an update every 5 to 8 years. It says about 10 years. But, especially in periods of time where there's a lot of growth, a lot of change, you want to look at it more often. I say growth. I just presented at CML last week on a couple of different things. And one of them was the shift from growth to change. We used to say everybody's growing in Colorado. I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore, but everybody is changing. Everybody is shifting. And so I'm trying to shift my language to say, don't think about growth anymore. Think about change. How are you adapting to change? The changing populations that are coming in, the changing needs of your population, right? The use is okay. So it's a little bit different, same kind of thing, but the big one too, capital improvement planning starts laying out where your utilities can go, where they should go, what your capacity needs are. Make sure that you're ahead on capital improvements or facility upgrades with the district needs to be a big party of this project. Make sure that there's capacity and infrastructure to serve. I mentioned this comes straight from the statutes. The Planning Commission is the one that's responsible for it. CRS, it does require, CRS is Colorado Revised Statutes. It does require certain elements to be in a master plan. However, your population is just about 500, is that right?
Yes.
So it only kicks in a requirement at 2,000. So statutorily, you do not need to do a comp plan. However, if you want to get state funding, which, anyone here work for the state? I did, so I could say it. That's the only thing they're good for, right? Getting money. If you want to get their money, you need to meet their requirements. And one that's in the newer version, just passed last year with Senate Bill 217, 1271, I don't know, can't keep track of it anymore, is, so water supply is a new one. Water supply and facilities needs to be in a comprehensive plan, and strategic growth initiatives, which is still DOLA is working through the guidance on that. They still don't have exactly what that is, but I think that it's going to be very important for this community in particular. We're the valuable ag land. We're the valuable resources that shouldn't be developed, shouldn't be built on, and what that shift is. And I think that, again, as an outsider coming into a beautiful community, you have some amazing assets, natural beauty that you probably want to preserve and conserve. And how do you reflect that in the built environment while still, respecting and honoring that past and culture? So yeah, there are specific requirements in CRS. And then yeah, recreation and tourism, because it's such an important economic driver to the state, it has to be a part of, in particular, part of your comp plan. Any questions on the comp plan? Okay. Everybody know this? Maybe, yes? Okay, I'll just keep going then. Land use regulations. I use land use regulations to broadly include zoning, subdivision, building permits, kind of that whole process of going from vacant, empty land to improved land with utility services, all the way up to building. Just so you know, it's not something that you all made up. This comes from 1924, the Zoning Enabling Act back in Washington. And then the Constitution then turns this down to enables the state. And then the state in Title 29 enables local governments with that empowerment. So that's where it comes from. Some of the major things to think about when we talk about zoning and land development are these four things. We're really talking about the First Amendment from a constitutional standpoint: freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. When we talk about churches, when we talk about the right to assemble, these are all things that really need to be considered in land use regulations. Freedom of speech, signs, all that kind of stuff. Due process, that's a big one right now, right? But due process means that everybody has their opportunity. You all, I'll get to that in a second. And then takings. Takings, anybody know what takings is?
Could you give us that
Sure.
definition so we
Yep.
all know it?
Yeah. So the layman's terms of it is that I can't just come and take your property just because I want without due compensation, right? So the municipal authority for eminent domain and condemnation, it's kind of that. But there has to be, and a big word here, a legal nexus, right? Between what you're requesting or what the applicant is requesting and what you're taking. So the legal term of takings is exaction. Okay, so if I have 200 acres out here and I want to put 30 homes on it, there needs to be right of way in order to put roads, utilities to serve that property. Those are exactions. You can legally require dedication of land for right of way, right? But you can't just take a trail easement, say, along this property just because you want it. I'm dealing with one community right now who's going through eminent domain because they want to get a trail easement across the private property. And so there's just this balancing act in there. What is being asked of an applicant has to be correctly reflected in what you're asking for and taking as a community. Otherwise, it's called the takings.
So a potential example, so in our historical district that was platted in 1880 with 25 by 150 lots.
Mhm.
Our current policy says you need to have 2 lots to build. It also says you can build a single family home on that, you can build a duplex on that. You can build 2 separate dwellings on those 2 lots. But if I only have 1 lot, I can't do anything. Is that a taking for someone who just has 1 lot?
So I am not an attorney, so this is not legal advice or legal, theory or anything. That would be a hard one to prove, though, right? Because when you start looking at from a taking standpoint, right? Would that be a takings? It depends, but probably not, because that is a value that is clear in the town's regulations. But what you bring up is a really good point, that takings is not just physical takings. It's the opportunity for as well. So it is a good thing to think about. That what you're facing and talking about in particular is not uncommon. The lot size versus the railroad lots, the minor lots, the originally platted lot sizes, deal with it kind of everywhere. But in this day and age, reducing lot size, one of the things we're talking about in the affordable housing, the housing needs assessment and the code assessment associated with those is reducing minimum lot size. There's a big movement to say, don't even have minimum lot sizes now. Assuming that you have lot setbacks, lot coverage, and other parameters that reflect it. But yeah. Good.
It depends.
Yeah.
Is your
Oh,
answer.
that is true. That is very true. So 2 big terms. Quasi judicial action, anybody know that? And ex parte communication. Not gonna get into it. We have a whole conversation on it, but just knowing when just about any land use application comes in front of both the planning commission and the town board, you're acting as judge. And of course, you don't want the judge to be walking in with the applicant or the plaintiff in a case if you're a defendant, because you're afraid that they might have been swayed by that conversation outside of what you're talking about. So that's called quasi judicial. That means that you're taking a law and applying it to a specific situation, and in this case, a specific piece of land. So anytime that you're taking the land use regulations and applying it to a specific piece of property in town, you're acting as a judge, and it is considered this quasi judicial action. So you want to be really careful. It's where you have public hearings, right? And maybe you have scripts here. I don't know if do you guys have scripts from your who's your legal counsel? Is it
Nobody right
We're
now.
in between.
We're in between
No? Okay.
attorneys.
okay?
We do have scripts for public
Okay.
hearings and
Yep.
for executive session.
And those are because it's a quasi judicial process. Ex parte communication, all that really means is don't talk to anybody outside the hearing, right? If you meet the applicant over on the on the street, and they just want to talk about it, say I can't. We have to consider everything at the hearing. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yep.
Does that go for any and all of us, including the, I want to say adjunct, but I don't mean adjunct.
The alternates?
Alternates.
I would say yes, just because you don't want to get to the point, an application comes in now, right? Usually it's 2-3 months down the road it comes to you. So who knows if you'll have to sit on there. So I would say it's best practices for everybody to abide by those.
Fair enough.
And if not, you can always say conflict of interest. Right? That's why you have alternatives probably. Small towns, there's conflicts. It happens, right? What can be regulated? And this, people are always surprised and not surprised. But that Zoning Enabling Act gives you very broad authority in regulating different types of land use and the impacts of those. Everything from land use itself, single family, multifamily, commercial, industrial, right? Those are the broad brush of strokes. Layouts, the layout of buildings, of lots, of blocks, access, where the utilities go. All of this stuff can be regulated. Architectural design, review and approval procedures. There are some things from a federal standpoint that you can't mess with, right? Fair Housing Act. So one of the things you'll hear, if something is part of a Fair Housing Act, you can't deny it, right? Single family homes has to be treated similarly. RIPALA, which is the Religious Institution, something Act. You can't treat a religious institute differently than any other place of assembly. So there are some of those federal guidelines that come into play. Oh. So now, any questions on the framework that's get out of law now? Now we get into TJ's.
I have a question. So
Sure.
Landscaping, that's kind of a new one for me. We don't have any policy regarding that. But we do in front of most of our homes. We have town roads with right-of-ways and kind of a no man's land between the curb and the private property that oftentimes just tends to be weeds. Do towns require the adjacent property owner to maintain that strip? And do they require some kind of landscaping? The first level would be, just keep it mowed for fire safety. Second level would be to actually do something with that space, plant a tree or whatever. What do other towns do?
Sure.
Because I don't think we have any policy regarding that.
We have a policy regarding how high your grass can be. And
On your lot, but not on the no man's land.
that is considered your responsibility.
It is. That's it.
That's what we've always done.
If it's an easement, I don't know what you mean by no man's land, other than
The
easement.
no man's land is from the curb to the property line, to the private property line. So for example, the town comes through my neighborhood and where there's a vacant lot, they're mowing the no man's land. I maintain our no man's land. In fact, we've landscaped part of it, but we mow it on a regular basis just to keep the weeds under control. So I don't know. I really don't know what our policy is. I don't know if the clerks know what that policy is or if there's a written policy, but I'm just trying to get an idea of what other towns do with that space that tends to be neglected.
Sure. So it sounds like you probably have the regulation and the language. It's usually in the public property section of the code.
Sure.
When we do landscape regulations in the land use code, we try to tie back to that and say, yep, it's your responsibility. But generally, it's in a portion of the municipal code,
Okay.
of which Chapter 10 land use code is a part of, right? That talks about public property. So that, where your property line is, that no man's land is technically town property, town right of way, between the edge of the curb and your private property. Most places do require the property owner to maintain adjacent right of way or public property and is responsible for it. That also includes snow removal with sidewalks. I've seen different places do different things as far as maintaining sidewalk, right? But in general, that is a policy that can be determined. It can be placed on the private property owner. When it comes to landscape regulations, I think of three types of landscaping. You have site landscaping, parking lot landscaping, and right-of-way landscaping. And so if you maybe start thinking about it, it's three different components, you can regulate all three of those differently. And then have different standards for each. Okay.
Could you look at that policy for me?
I wrote it up, yep.
Okay.
Oh, can you?
Make that full size, just the,
The big button.
don't look, don't look.
The slideshow, maybe from current slide.
There.
There we go. Perfect.
Is that, okay.
That's it. So when you start thinking about land use regulations, this is our team's new, it's tried and pretty solid, philosophy now, that there are three elements to it. And as you go through, I guarantee you, if this kind of sticks with you, you look at your code and be like, oh, I get it. There are three types of provisions in land use regulations. One is administration, two is procedures, and the third are standards. What happens is that you try to separate all these things to be easily administered and developed or enforced, but inevitably they become intertwined. So first, administration, these are the functions that include legal authority, empowerment, enforcement procedures, all those types of things that 95% of people don't look at and don't need to look at. It's only looked at when you're enforcing something down the road. But these are kind of the general sections. You have your general administration, your general provisions, non-conforming uses are in there, and enforcement procedures. Then you have your process. Your process is both your application review process, what is submitted at each application type, and then you'll see, I think on the next one here, non-conforming uses and standards are in all three. Some do kind of shift between all of them. But procedures are how you go about requesting something from the town, reviewing something, and getting approval for something in the town. Again, this is that due process component. And then the last is most of the code. It's your standards. It's your setbacks. It's your zoning districts. It's all the things that you say, does it meet these? Your landscape requirements, right? And yeah, so, and then again, the non-conforming use sections. So these three elements, as you start thinking and looking at your code, you'll start seeing probably that they're intertwined. And that does make it very difficult to administer and enforce a land use code and reference code sections. So those are three things to think about. All right, developing West Cliff's future. Oh, oh, bummer. I don't know what happened up there. Anybody can guess what the third is? Community vision.
You need, well, all of this, your T's, you need to really start as, what are your outcomes that you expect to achieve with anything? That's where you start. Don't start with administration, you don't start with standards, you don't start with anything. You start there. What are the outcomes? Workforce housing. We want workforce housing in our community. And that's where you start. And with many of the things that we have in our Title 10, we're gonna have to adjust. We're gonna have to say something about that we won't allow any other place in the community, but we're gonna allow it here because it costs less. So I think that's the first thing you have to start with is what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? And some of the administrivia that you put up, standards may have to be changed, but you start there and then you go to process and you go to structure.
Well, well, let me back up. I never talked about updating it. These are the components.
I understand that, I understand the components, but what I'm trying to say is that so often everybody says, puts a structure in place and then what they're trying to achieve.
Right.
So that's what you do, and we're a small town, so we say, we want workforce housing. Well, gee, it doesn't meet our standards. Well, then maybe we have to change our standards. Well, wait a minute. You don't let everybody else do it outside this zone, so maybe you have to have a special zone for workforce housing.
Mhm.
Then you get into the Fair Labor Standards Act, not Fair, but the
Fair Housing.
Fair Housing Act. You know, so I'm just saying, you really have to start with what are your goals? What are your outcomes that you want to achieve, and go from there, go backwards through a process and then structure.
I think that's what TJ started with. Vision, goals and objectives. And then do our zoning policies get in the way of those things or help us get to that objective or goal?
Well, if I may, this right here, and wish that showed up. This to me is the big question that you all need to be asking right now. Does our community vision match our development regulations and match the goals in our comprehensive plan? Because if those three are not aligned, then it is just an uphill battle, no matter what you're trying to do. We know that right now, these two aren't, right? We need workforce housing, and the code doesn't allow it. Do the policies and the goals in the comprehensive plan align with those in the right locations, while balancing? Because here's the thing, that I know you're saying this in there, but land use, more so than any other public policy, you turn the knob here and the effect is going to be unknown. I used this in a couple of our conversations, that the beauty, I think, in this community is the valley floor. I don't know, is that like referred to, or is that just something that I'm like, that's a beautiful valley floor? And the idea is to keep that character there. That is your culture, that's your tradition. That's what this community was built on, right? Ranching, farming, all that kind of stuff. To have that build up into anything other than that probably disrespects the history of this community. What that's doing though, by doing that and having conservation easements on there, again, I can say that here because you have them. Some communities, that's a 4-letter word. But if done right, they're done well. You're preserving that, conserving that value. That is having a market effect on the value of property here. So in order to make sure that all of these dials are aligned, you have to look at a broader perspective. That's why when we start with the comprehensive plan, the very first stop, part of doing a master plan, land use plan, we look at the 3-mile area and start whittling that back. You take your current town boundaries, go out 3 miles, look at everything that's of value, and then whittle it back to what then becomes your growth management area. Where do you, as the town of Westcliff, manage the growth, and how so? With respect and understanding of what's happening right outside. So that's the process through which going through there starts very high level, and looks at all of those things. Where does utilities come from? What's your supply? Nowadays, the very first thing you look at is more mountainous communities. You look at a blue line. What's the elevation at which we can't serve water anymore, right, for gravity systems? Or 2, what's the capacity of supply? So how many single-family equivalents can your water system, the district, supply? And then you start whittling that away, because that's your limiting factor anymore. And then you can start figuring out in there where what goes, if you will.
I think you're aware of this, but we don't control the sewer and water.
Correct.
In the 2 towns.
Yep.
Or the valley floor.
Or the valley floor. We have a piece of it. The town goes to Grape Creek. So we have a little bit of ag property, this side of Great Creek. But what I don't know, and Paul, you may be able to answer this, but I don't know what the comprehensive plan of Round Mountain Water and Sewer. I don't know if they know how many vacant residential lots we have right now, or have any idea what the two towns have, at least in their service area, and whether they know what the limit is.
They know how many, I don't know whether it's people or taps that they can support long-term with the water they have.
Okay.
And, of course, the biggest problem they've got is sewage. But the water is not their biggest problem, that's sewage and their infrastructure. Those are the two biggest problems.
Right.
Existing infrastructure. But I don't remember the numbers. Maybe Barry is trying to say something about that. I don't know.
No, I have no comment. I don't know those numbers either.
I think, anyway, we need to be talking to Round Mountain about what those numbers are based on what we see on the ground right now. Are we going to exceed that, or are we safely within the blue line you talk about? I just wanted to say, I look at all the things that we're facing right now, things that I think we need to do in the near and medium term. We've got 5 people on the commission right now. Experience, business experience. We own all of the property here in town. But we don't know what we don't know. And my concern is that we will make decisions that seem reasonable to us. And they will have unintended consequences because we don't have the depth of knowledge in terms of planning and zoning. We've been doing that as a town for at least 5 decades. We've been making well-intentioned decisions with people who have a lot of experience and knowledge, but not knowledge about that. And so we've created this situation now that requires a strategic, top to bottom review of what's on that map.
And then you're gonna get a lot of pushback at the same time because of non-conforming uses, because of the fact that so-and-so's lived here for 185 years and they've never done that, they've never had to do it. And so whenever you come back after the fact and try to regulate correctly from that move forward.
It's gonna take public meetings and collaboration and a building of trust. It's gonna be messy from time to time. People are gonna be upset. We're gonna be talking about rezoning. We're gonna create space for multifamily and not just for workforce housing, but just multifamily period. That's gonna require rezoning, either some properties that are now residential zone or single family zone or commercial. In our last meeting, we talked about identifying properties that might fit that bill. And I've already prepared for our next meeting because we'll talk about that. But I'm personally, I think I know enough now to be absolutely certain I don't know enough. Not only do we need legal counsel and advice and guidance, but we need some guidance relative to planning and zoning if we're thinking about making a decision. What are the implications? And I would like to be able to talk to somebody. Doesn't have to be TJ, but I would like to be able to talk to somebody that can give me an educated opinion and not just guys around the table here thinking, well, that sounds reasonable, we'll go for it. Barry?
Couple things. About backing up. Workforce housing, the big topic right now, that's a reaction. It's a reaction to an economic model that you've allowed to develop here in the last 15 years.
Longer than that.
So, no, in the last 15 years is when we've seen this skyrocket. So I suggest one thing is that you need to really consider valley-wide what kind of economic model you want to have here to live in. Secondly, I had the honor of touring TJ around during the housing needs assessment and outreach to 3 planning groups, county, town, here in Silver Cliff. And I was very struck by 2 things. One, I really have not looked a lot at zoning other than the development I was working on in Silver Cliff and specifically trying to do use by right. The differences in the 3 different jurisdictions are overwhelming. They're ridiculous. They are unconnected. They are not comprehensive in a way that you can plan anything beyond your 1 square mile, and you're long past the point where you can decide to plan for your 1 square mile and it's not going to affect the rest of the valley, good or bad, good or bad. The other thing I was very struck by, so this is, and he's not paying me, but you may, of course, every commissioner, every planning person that we talk to, after 5 minutes of conversation with him, they just sat there with their mouth open, dumbfounded at how far off they were, how little they actually knew, how much more they wanted to know. I agree very much with John that you need a professional level, but I also think that the towns and the county need to take responsibility to come together more to talk about the future of the valley and how you want to go about that. And yeah, there's going to be hell raising, there's no doubt about it. You might want to outlaw any weapons coming in.
That makes it interesting.
Right, I remember that. They were going to give you a shotgun behind the counter.
Don't give me a shotgun.
We see a slow incremental development. The county housing, workforce housing committee that was around this now has on its voting constituency an elected member from each jurisdiction. I've never seen that. The housing needs assessment was participated in by all 3 jurisdictions. My currently hobbled local planning capacity grant application involved all 3 jurisdictions. These are new things that are good things. I would encourage, before you jump off into some replanning based on a reaction, which, by the way, when I first came across this reaction at one of the town hall meetings here, I realized that at the time, your planning guy or your whatever, I forget what Caleb was, but what he was looking to solve the actual of housing you needed from an earlier needs assessment, all of that in 1 plot of land in Westcliff. Well, there were 2 other significant projects underway flying to him. That's not helpful. It's not helpful to private developers, and it's not helpful to solving the whole problem in the way you want to solve it. So I encourage you to have somebody like TJ come in, and I would encourage every one of the jurisdictions to do exactly that, have a collective meeting about what you've learned. Nothing wrong with having some differences. There's differences between Silver Cliff and Westcliff and the county. But to have the overlap and the consistency that you got is very discouraging trying to build anything. You know, whether it's multifamily, single family, or anything else, it's different rules everywhere. That's not helpful this small of a community. Thank you.
Well, I've been on this board over 20 years. And just working with Silver Cliff, we finally began to change some ordinances, like a curfew ordinance. It's now the same, well, the hour is now the same in both, but it's just like pulling teeth to get it done. And, you know, Melanie and Aaron might know this, it's not as easy as one might think. People say, what if the two communities merge? I could live as long as Methuselah, and that's never gonna happen. That's just not gonna happen. It's culturally not gonna happen. There are people who live, they'll even shop in West. Just say, it's just what it is, and they want their own zip code. Okay, fine, but I don't think they're gonna get it. But the point is that this is a cultural barrier that is not come time soon. I understand what you're saying, Barry. At least we should know what their workforce housing plans are in Silver Cliff, and they should know ours. What they're actively trying to develop. Clearly, if we need 50 new workforce housing units, they shouldn't all fall into Westcliff, because they have workforce there, the county does as well. So how should that divide up, how we should do what, and so on and so forth. It's easier, I think, for probably the two towns, because we have property that we own that can be developed for that, and Silver Cliff must have some too. The county might be different, although I know they have things like school sections.
The county has lots in Silver Cliff. That's what's being built up there.
Yeah.
Also, the school district has 28, almost quarter acre lots.
School sections, yeah. I don't know how they get revenue off those if guys are leasing them to ranch or cattle. Well, anyway, it's just challenges that we face, and we get lip service. Oh yeah, we ought to do it, so forth, but it never. And we as a board here in Westcliff, we've never really concentrated much on that. The town clerks work closer together than anybody else do. So it's just what it is.
I think too that as far as workforce housing goes, Westcliff probably stands to benefit the most. So we shouldn't just assume that everybody else is gonna take care of our problem / benefit. And I'm not saying we should ignore what they're doing. We should definitely share that, but we still have to come up with our own decisions.
And when you mentioned the economic model that we've allowed to develop, what model is that?
Tourism,
Well,
pass-through tourism.
yes, it is. Construction's has been a big employer of people and paying higher wages. But you know, that's cyclical too. So is tourism to a degree. Winter is winter, you know, and so everything freezes up, construction stops, tourism stops. And we have to develop some other kind of employment vehicle. That the county, the clinic, and those places all, they keep chugging along regardless. But my business slows significantly in the winter. Brian's probably does too.
Yes, sir.
I don't know about yours, Chris.
Mine does, but it had to do with the economy of I'm nationwide
Right.
and worldwide to some extent.
Right. So I'm just saying. And then that puts a bigger challenge in front of you. What kind of business is gonna locate here that works, you know, 365? I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. Manufacturing of some kind, but then you obviously need a workforce, transportation becomes an issue, and costs, get material in and out, and so forth. The trust plant up here does pretty well. I don't know how many people they employ. I see their trucks on Highway 50 all the time, taking trusses here and there. But ranching has always been a big part of our economy here, still is. But, you know, ranches are shrinking in size. Kids growing up on the ranch don't want a ranch, I can understand that. And they leave. So there's only a few ranchers left that are young people. So that's a whole other data discussion.
That's a whole, another discussion, so I'd like to
That's
kind of
not on the
let's
agenda
stick with
either.
planning and
I didn't
zoning.
bring it up.
So, a question for TJ, so your company acts as the, I guess the planning for several small towns. On a virtual basis. So what does that look, does it look like for a town like us that does not have the capacity to have a planner on staff? Does not have the depth of knowledge in a planning commission to make the kind of decisions we're facing here in the near future. How do we get that help? What does it look like for your company to provide that? Is it like having an attorney on call that I can eventually I will have an attorney that I can say, hey, need to deactivate PUDs. What's the process for doing that? And then right on the other side of activating those PUDs is we zone them now. And how does that make sense? And that probably is going to require community meetings of the property owners within that PUD to talk about where we're going to take this in the future. So how does your company work with a small town and provide fill that gap, that planning gap?
Sure. So first, we're not the only firm that does this.
Okay.
So you could go out for RFP, request for proposals, all services. Note that in Colorado and most states, this is a professional service agreement. You do not have to. So the procurement process is up to you and your local procurement process, whatever that is. There are multiple jurisdictions around here that use this type of service. And I'd suggest checking with them too on how that goes, right? And I'm not here to say we're the best.
That's called service on call.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so like, for example, I think Fremont County
Yeah.
Uses an on-call service planner. We did some work down in Huerfano County on call for a little bit. You know, so on and so forth, but there are plenty. So, but generally speaking, the way that it would work would depend on you and your needs. Our approach, we're time and materials. We don't do a retainer or anything like that. It would be an hourly rate for whatever services are asked for. The belief is you get what you ask for, and you don't pay for more or less, right? It's, to us, suitable business model. Others, you know, the varieties out there. What we would probably want to do, and I apologize, you guys can
No,
move
I'm
back.
fine. I can hear you.
So, you know, that can go so many different places, and I don't know what the next step is here. What I'll potentially suggest is that it starts with just a bunch of learning, a bunch of conversations here, a bunch of understanding, and that is not to say you don't know and then don't understand, right? What don't you? What else is there? What opportunities? And just real quick, go ahead.
Occurs to me, I've only seen a couple drafts of housing needs assessment. I know there's a big chunk of that you still have to get in there. I hope to hear about it tomorrow morning. But I wonder if you could take a high level draft of the housing needs assessment and look at TJ's input and maybe do kind of a menu. Can we have some of this and all of that?
Yeah, I think you can. I think you could. Well, that's only one component. The fact though is that you get somebody, I think the most important part is to have somebody be part of the team, right? Rather than a contractor that's coming in and helping with one component, have somebody here understands your needs, understands the needs and can help the uniqueness of Westcliff. I'm very proud to say that we have what I call 3 legacy clients that I actually have the most tenure in their staff, and are there for long term. That is appreciated by the residents, builds trust, right? The trust component, I think, is the biggest part here. I'm not gonna build trust overnight here. I know that. We know that. That was a big part of the housing needs assessment. I'm a little bit off track, but I think that the arrangement can be as varied as you'd like. As you identify projects though, those should have, they could be specific with dollar amounts, timelines for that on-call service. So when we do our on-call service contracts or agreements, we have 3 elements to it. We have development review, and that means that an application comes in, we review it, and there's an applicant. Typically, most communities, and this might, I was just reading this, I'm not sure if you guys have it in Silver Cliff, what's called the reimbursement agreement. This is that any cost that goes into reviewing that application gets passed forward to the applicant, and it's their responsibility to pay. That would cover engineering, planning, attorneys, any specialty requirements, things like that. So from the development review standpoint, that is a potential 0 cost to the town. Then you have your on-call services, and that is if somebody is sitting here, right, answering the phone, somebody walks in and has a question, so interpretations like that. Staff meetings with staff, right? That's kind of the on-call component. That's time and material. There's something that, is a special project. Like, let's just say a zoning analysis, land use analysis. What's vacant and what's the capacity right now? Based on current zoning, we could do a timeline and a budget for that. That's something, a task, if you will, that would have a start and end date, and be equitable in that way. So we try to be really flexible with our agreements to span that whole spectrum of needs. Like I said, we try to do everything that an in-house planning team would do. Not every company does, but you can always have, that is the art to do all these things. Not sure if that necessarily answered the question.
That does.
Our business is into the $10,000 to $20,000
Yeah.
per project. And that's your fee from us, or that's the project fee, and there's part of that.
No, so what he's, really, this is a very broad statement, and I'm sure Barry can understand this since you've been kind of looking at projects. Planning consultant firms, the big planning consultant firms, or most planning consultant firms, do projects. They'll do, who's it, DHM did your, or design work for the Parks and Recreation Plan not too long. But those big projects, some of these firms will only do projects that are 50,000, 80,000 plus. And they're saying, all right.
Okay, the question is that 50,000, 80,000 to them, or the whole project is 50 to 80,000?
The whole project's 50 to 80,000, right? So up your plan, right? Whatever that project is. What I'm suggesting, and what I don't like about those, is that says, all right, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna figure out exactly what you need, and I'm gonna give you the recommendations and be on my way. To me, and our experiences, my experiences in rural Colorado, in particular, in the mountains, is that that's not what's needed, right? We just need to move the needle to understand what the impacts are next. And so what I was referring to is that we specially do that, for whatever reason. So we'll say, all right, you need a code assessment, for example, what we're doing. It's a little bit higher level and we're doing it for all three, but generally that's a $10,000 project, $8,000 to $12,000. And it tells you, here's where your code sits. The inconsistencies, the disconnections with this, how does it compare to law, right? And that gives you tools to make. And so the point being, $10,000 to get you to be able to make the next decision informed. Don't spend $100,000 for a project that you're like, I don't know why did we just spend $100,000? The plan's gonna sit on the shelf, right? Does that make sense? The numbers can change, right? But that's, I'll give a couple of examples that, Hot Sulphur Springs. You guys familiar with Hot Sulphur Springs? I've referred to it as a similar community here in a lot of ways, simply because it's kind of a pass-through community. Has some great offerings, but trying to figure out its own identity. I started with them over 8 years ago. Again, this is not a sales pitch. It's kind of giving the example, right? We started with training, and for 2 years, I did quarterly training with the board and planning commission. Those are, relatively cheap. Come in, do the presentation for 2 hours, and great, tell me what you need next quarter. After 2 years of doing that, the town with a budget of about $800,000, decided that they understood that last diagram I showed, that our community values are not aligned with everything else that we have from a regulatory standpoint. We need to start over and do a comprehensive plan and do a land use code update. They went to DOLA, got a $100,000 grant, matched $100,000. So that's over 10% of their budget. They put up to match that, to do a $200,000 project, to realign all of these things. And so there's a good example where small incremental costs gave them the ability to make a decision that they felt comfortable saying, we need this, and they would then spend that money. Rather than just saying, hey, you need a comp plan. Well, let's throw $200,000 at the problem and not know what we solved.
I'm trying to think about what are our community values.
And that's what I was trying to get at earlier. Brian,
I'm smelling what you're selling.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I can't what you sell anymore, but I'm allergic to.
But I mean, really, I've never seen, yeah, we got dark skies, ag, water, mountains, tourism, blah, blah, but I mean.
That's what I was trying to say.
It's kind of a hodgepodge of
compartmentalized.
Look at
just
the
where
county
we-
master plan. Look at the one that came out. I can't remember when they did it, that's.
We just redid this, what, a couple of years ago, right?
That was the very first document we were considering moving here that I read, and I think it encapsulates. Then, there's been an influx of a different
Right.
demographic since then. However, that what is stated in that plan is what brought that demographic in. So that would be something to perhaps start with, and I think I sent it to you guys.
Point is what you're trying to get at, I think, is
Yeah.
the values aren't just the values of Westcliff. I was trying to get that earlier. It's the values of the whole valley, even though you live in Westcliff and you're governed by Westcliff and maybe your business is Westcliff. The values are of the whole valley. That's what brings people here. And that's what really, and that you're right, the county's plan looks at that in a better way. That's, I think, if you look at strong towns housing, okay, they look at this alignment problem. Are your basic values aligned with your public policy? And they're not in any of the 3 jurisdictions right now.
I think that's what TJ's been trying to tell us.
Yeah, right.
I'm not telling, I'm asking.
He's trying to communicate, educate us.
Trying try to let us know that that's an extreme possibility. The point is, yeah, it's real.
But
I
I don't think
want
it's
to make
just
sure that everybody
opposed as
is heard. And so I'd like to hear from Jerry and Pam and Chuck and Brian. You just stepped into something that you didn't have any idea you were stepping into. So Pam, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was here to listen, but the takeaways, you talked about needing expertise and guidance. We don't know what we don't know. And that's something that is a reoccurrent theme that started with the workforce housing. We just don't know what we don't know. And, I'm not plugging specifically for TJ, although I would, having talked to him and his colleagues for many hours during the workforce housing, just even outside the scope of the workforce housing project. Doing the outlay that is needed right now, outlay, I mean resources, financial resources, and the time it takes to get that guidance and expertise, and particularly from an organization that has done work like this in Colorado specifically, because every state does it differently. Every state's got a different culture, this, that, and the other. To me would be money well spent. And I think you will find that there is a larger portion of the community than you realize that would be behind that. They just don't come to these meetings. They don't know what's, but they get it. And I think you would get more support than you think to do that. So that's my takeaway is I absolutely love living here. Been to the planning commissions for both towns and the town meetings and stuff. Been here for 8 years. And clearly the people that serve are doing so because they want to serve. They have their own businesses, their own expertises and stuff. And I think it's important to start, to recognize we don't know what we don't know, or you don't know what you don't know. I don't know if TJ's the one or they're to help define what that is, but his point about taking discrete areas, like you were saying, and looking at them, zoning, the current zoning, and find, seeing how it matches with, might be a good place to start. That's all I have to say.
That's a lot. Thank you. Oh, well, of course, Chris.
I would like to interject, as always,
Yeah.
that I think the community alignment is something that we need to work on. The workforce housing is a great example of that we started moving forward with our ideas of what would be good, but relaying that to the community is what we want to do. Didn't go so smoothly. There was misinterpretations, whether deliberate or accidental, whatever, I don't know, I don't care. But all that hit the rest of the town and just spread like wildfire before we even got a chance to say anything. We need to learn how to portray what we want to do, and be honest about it, okay? Which I understand that there's a lot of skepticism towards any kind of level of government, which is fair today, but yeah, to do it honestly and do it in a way that, hey, this is what we want to do, why we want to do it. We need to know how to do that. We don't know how to do that. And I don't think we've learned how to do that just because we went through the snafu. Because I think we've got a good idea, a good plan that will benefit not just Westcliff, but will benefit the area. But again, yes, we do need to know and share with the rest of the area to what everybody's gonna do. We can't do it as if we're an island. We're not an island. But yeah, we need to know how to do that. I think we suck at it.
That's a good way of putting it, very succinct.
I'll add just from an observation, again, I'm an outsider, but I have a very soft spot in my heart for small communities like yours. And I've been trying to get it this way for a very long time, so I'm glad I'm finally here. But I've seen this. And not to put too much pressure on it, because you can go off and do whatever, right? But just know when you're dealing with land use issues, these are generational decisions. And they shouldn't be taken lightly. I believe, and again, I'm a planner, so I'm a little biased, right? But business owners, right? You don't make a huge change in a new service or a new market, right? Without thinking through what that does. It's the same thing. This is the business plan for the town. Where are we gonna be? How are we gonna get there? What are the level of service that needs to be provided? Based on growth, do you need more police officers? How are you gonna get that revenue? Right? So it's all these things kind of pulled together that if you go in a direction, let's just say, change this property to multifamily, the ripple effects down the road, maybe it's simple, maybe it's nothing, but I think you owe it to the town, right? And the future residents to be good stewards of that town plan. And so it is a generational, right, kind of a decision that you all get to make.
And that is what we're looking
So I
to do
applaud you for
is,
doing that.
we're looking to set up for the possibilities of the future as opposed to, hey, we're gonna do this and do it now. That's not what we're trying to do, and that's kind of one of the mistakes that I think our community made, is you're gonna make these changes. So, no, we're just making the allowances for a future growth in a way that we can manage. And boy, did that just not get conveyed.
Yeah.
So, that, I mean, there were other mistakes, but that was one of them in that, one slice of what this town was about.
Knowing how to get ahead of it before that happens.
Yeah, yeah,
Publicity,
and,
basically.
yeah, and again, to do it in a way that's honest, and that's, you know, one of the recurring themes too, is that we had personal stake in these changes. It's like, no, I don't think any of us owns land on the area that we were looking to change. Or, you know, like what it's there was
It's interesting, a lot of
really
people who
twisted.
came to that meeting did not live in West Cliff.
Yeah.
And I think it's to Barry's point, West Cliff is Custer's town. And everybody who comes to town is usually coming from outside of town. We're only a mile and a quarter square, only 500 people. But there's 4,500 people outside of town that come here to shop and buy groceries and go to the movies and all the rest of it.
And our address is Westcliff.
Right.
I don't live in the.
And you're, yes,
We are
you're
Westcliff.
You're a stone's,
Silver Cliff,
you're a
I consider
stone's
Silver.
throw away,
You know,
almost.
what's
But
funny
I
thing is a zip code, if the address
hold
is
that
across,
thought.
they go to Silver Cliff, they don't go to Westcliff.
I want to give as,
Mail.
I want to,
Oh,
I'm going to
okay.
close this at 5 o'clock, but I want to know what Chuck is thinking.
Well, I'm from around 70 years ago, 60 years ago. This place was trying to keep its growth small. No growth. And in fact, in the 70s, we didn't care if it was 20 people moving into the valley. It was, no, we want to keep it small. Well, the area is moving forward. We're twice as many people as when I graduated high school. It's just gonna happen. So a lot of these people that are out and around, like the people that came to that meeting, ready to strangle everybody.
Yeah.
You know, they were of the mindset, we don't want to change anything, but change has to happen. And our job is to manage that change so that it doesn't look like we're becoming an Aurora or a Breckenridge or something like that. And that's my opinion. I mean,
Do you think we need help?
We could probably use help.
Right?
Yeah, I echo everything that everybody said today. I mean, I'd be totally be on board with bringing on some help. It'd be good to know, other towns that you've worked with, our size, the scopes of work you did, timelines in which you accomplished, those scopes of work, costs, not only the cost to get the ball rolling, extended cost to go past that point. And then, your whole, which, I know you guys are gonna provide results, but that's gonna be in the scope of work. I just really wanted to see what other towns our size, just to kind of know what we're getting on board with, knowing, of course, cost is gonna be the first thing that everybody's gonna ask me about. How much is this gonna cost? We're bringing in another company to do another,
We even have the money for it.
Yes, yeah, and so, I mean, this is the one thing that I always hear cause I'm the main corner in town, so I get to stick my legs out on the street all the time, and so it's just, these are kind of the things that frustrate people is we're always bringing in an outside consulting company to look at this, dude.
Why aren't you doing it yourself?
And then, oh, yeah, definitely. I don't have my own business to run. I'm just, yeah, definitely. And then because we don't have the knowledge, So I totally agree with what everybody said, And that way, whenever I'm asked questions, I can say, hey, this is who they worked with before. This was the scopes of the work. This is what they were mainly accomplishing. And it gives us a verbal retort to, whenever, that's always, you're gonna be greeted with skepticism to begin with. And, that's just kind of cool. I don't know if you probably have already something like that created from your company outfit.
Yeah, but, so before all of that though, I would, let's just hypothetically say you call me tomorrow or the mayor calls me tomorrow and says, hey, we want to get an agreement with you. I will empathetically say no.
Yeah.
My reason for saying no is everything that we're talking about. The perception of a conflict or some shady deal
Right,
is much worse than actual.
You're suggesting do an RFP?
Go to RFP.
right, yeah, definitely.
I don't know, I think that we have great abilities to serve, but you all need to make that decision, right? So I can help with that for sure. But that is, for all of those reasons, if that is the way that you go, I will not just take a contract. That's way too sketchy for me.
But you could help with
Correct,
us formulating an RFP.
correct. Now, here's another thing that, for some of those exact
Stuff you were
reasons,
talking about?
well,
Service on demand or?
yeah, on-call services.
Right.
But we would do it, so again, you don't need to go out to bid to have that.
Yeah.
What I would, and I do this across the board, it seems kind of weird and whatnot, but I charge for that time to do that.
Right.
So it's not a quid pro quo, right? Like, oh, you helped do this for free.
Yeah.
But I could send samples, I could help with that process,
Right.
fully knowing that our team is going to apply, right? So I don't want there to be any perception.
Yeah.
Because I've done this long enough in small communities where
Yeah.
we already have an uphill battle, right? We're gonna be talking about people's property rights and their future and stuff. We need to get rid of any perception. So that's one. And also just to be clear, what you'd be looking for is on-call services, and I could send some samples.
Or the project to review the zoning.
Well, I would say wait until you get the
Yeah.
code assessment,
Yeah.
because there's gonna be more than
Well, the code assessment, yeah. that's what I meant.
reviewing the code.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I can help kind of talk through that, as well and next steps.
Yeah.
But there is a reason that some of that stuff I like to charge for, not because I, gonna make $1 million on it, but the perception.
Yeah.
We all know.
I have
So-
a private jet, that's why I charge so much for Jack Daniels. Yes, it's, how much a pilot costs,
And
Yeah.
the other thing is that it's, think of it as again, trying to put it into some other terms of, you own a business, you said?
Yes,
Do you contract out IT services?
Oh, no, just liquor store right down the street.
Do you contract out, you have an accountant?
Oh, yes, I
Right.
do. I have an accountant,
So-
I've got tech support, yeah.
Right, so that's the same concept, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have whenever you need to, you get a call, you give them a call, say, hey, my computer's down, come
Right.
fix it, you get an invoice for
Yeah,
$100.
exactly.
That exact relationship.
Excellent.
So that's how the on-call stuff works.
Wonderful.
Then when it comes to projects, let's say it's like, hey, we wanna do this, and this. We wanna do, what's that? Code assessment. We wanna do a visioning session with the town. We wanna do a workshop between the town, the county, and
Right.
Silver Cliff,
Yeah.
right? Whatever that is, we could do cost, right? Generally, we do not to exceed, but those are things that, you would wanna put in there, things that you might need in the future, right? The other thing reason to go out to RFP for this is that projects, especially with, affordable housing being a main part of what is pushing here, but there's also other funding sources out there. That proposal, checks the box for a public process. So if you ask the right questions in there, you don't have to go out to bid later on, for some of those other types of projects. And so be real cautious about, or maybe not cautious, careful, but what you put in there, because if you can check the boxes for projects that you might need in the future, community visioning, facilitating discussions between the county and the towns, making things up, reviewing the code analysis, reviewing the zoning, we're looking at updating the code, right? Those types of things. You're gonna get project descriptions, and yeah, we have plenty of them, as do many of our partners and colleagues and competitors, and they're all the same. Elliot and his team, for example, we compete on projects and partner on projects, so it's a close-knit kind of industry. But those will all allow you to not have to go out later on, and that's the idea of save time later on as well.
Plus, I think it's important to have a long-term relationship.
Correct.
Jerry, I can't believe you don't have anything to say.
Well, there's an old saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And,
That's how we've been running the town.
and quite honestly, if the town's not gonna grow, you don't want it to grow, then like zoning regulations are irrelevant. They are what they are. You wouldn't need to change anything if you didn't think things needed to be changed, right? So, if you're gonna anticipate growth and want growth, like workforce housing, if you don't want any more businesses, maybe less businesses, then you don't have to worry about workforce housing, right?
That's right.
So the whole deal needs to start with a vision of what Westcliff is 10 or 20 from now.
Well said.
And then the pieces work to that.
I think we are looking for a healthy community where businesses support the town and the town can support the businesses. And the tourism just adds into that economy. Right now, we're falling short on our businesses being able to support the community because we don't have the staffing.
Or the housing.
Well, exactly, it's this, the cart before the horse problem, but, you gotta start somewhere and we gotta figure that out, and, I mean, my business doesn't have that issue, we don't have employees, we're not dependent on the community and such, but it's, when you look at it, I mean, since I'm not embroiled in that personal stake of it, I can see the problem, that's kind of what we're faced with.
Melanie,
Yes, sir.
do you have anything to say?
Only that I don't know if the budget is being considered in this. We're gonna have to amend the budget for this year. And we're already not having money for this kind of thing this year. Might be something that could roll over into next year, but just to keep that in mind.
But are we saving any money by not having an attorney right now?
We almost may have an attorney soon.
Okay.
I think that will
And are we
be,
saving any money by not having a town manager?
maybe, but that was also given to myself and Aaron because we've taken over that
Yeah.
job mostly.
Okay.
So you can get DOLA grants
We
for
can,
this work.
we can,
It's just
it's
having
not something
somebody-
that we're gonna do this year because we've already decided what we're doing is what we're doing.
Okay.
So it would be a possibility for something next year.
Grants probably don't happen that fast anyway.
Exactly, and we just don't have,
You don't have a grant, I'm sorry, Lynn?
they just don't happen that quickly. So it's something that we could start looking at for next year's cycle.
The clerks have taken the burden of writing grants.
I was just saying, I would imagine that would be the issue is grant writing is,
No, it's 90 days after you actually are awarded a grant before you have a contract.
right, right. But I mean, just doing the grant writing itself, requesting the grant, it takes a
Yeah.
lot of time.
A lot of time and it's, learning it.
And you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I know.
That's what we're doing now is trying to figure out what we don't know and learn it.
Yeah,
But so hopefully maybe by next year's
good to know.
time. Yeah, so that's why this year we decided not to do, a lot of the things that Caleb had planned, which he had planned, everything in the whole world he wanted. So we just want to do it right.
Youth has a way of doing that.
He does, yeah.
Youth has a way of doing that. You've gotta have that.
Well,
The aspirations somewhere.
yeah, right.
Gary, last word.
To Chris's concern, especially the whole planning commission, because I was in those meetings where it almost came to violence. Pam is part of the Custer County Workforce Housing Committee, and she took on the community outreach portion of the housing needs assessment and has been working like a dog for months on this. And it's sort of below the radar at the moment, partly because we're waiting for the new graphs and data that are coming with the housing needs assessment. But she has plans, and I won't speak for you, but I've watched this. She's got plans and already laid out literature. And there is an ongoing, I'll say permanent initiative here to bring the community aboard and help them understand the benefits. And so that's actually going on. So I think the next time.
And that's fair, but my point is, we failed to know any of that.
Right.
And so that didn't happen that was our failure,
Well,
not the communities, not anybody.
But you learned from it.
Well,
Yeah.
we're still trying to figure it out.
we learned from it and that's why we're so impressed with the CAI CPS system for doing the housing needs assessment and the DOLA requirements, because they really focus on community outreach. They get that you have to have the community on board. And so we're bringing that to you
Yeah, and
slowly.
yeah, and then my point is, yes, we do understand now that we have to figure that out. But as far as us board member or planning commission members and assuming the UP as well, we know we still fall short. We have to understand what that's gonna take. And assuming that somebody else can take care of it for us or whatever, it's just a bad plan.
Your business.
My wife and I manufacture mirrors for bicyclists. And we sell them mostly
You, for what now?
bicyclists,
You manufacture what for them?
rear view mirrors.
Oh, I thought you said marriages for
I
bicycles.
Isn't that what you thought? I was like, maybe I'll take up bicycling.
Okay.
You have
Got
a
it.
resource. You have a resource.
Well, yes,
Okay.
but again, it was our failure not to know that. It was our failure to start planning a vote before doing outreach, before kind of setting those, planting those seeds.
Didn't know what you
We didn't know. Yeah, we naively went into, okay, it's time to make a decision. You know, we're looking at a deadline or a window where it makes sense to apply for a grant. You know, so that's what we were thinking. We were thinking of the strategic aspects of it without understanding the tactical aspects of
And
it.
communications, that was also being outsourced to a contractor, but that's me now, so I have a better understanding and hopefully can.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, there's
It's all these
just,
parts that need to be together.
you know, and I guess I consider myself very new at this. I've been on the board now 3 years, including my time of
Alternate.
being an alternate. Maybe it's 4 years now. Remember? But
So you're an expert.
And thank you for doing that. It is a thankless job. I mean,
Well,
it's just, it's.
well, to be honest with you, I got into it because I already knew I didn't understand any of it. So it's like, okay, well, if I want to learn and understand any of it, join.
I bet. I'm gonna close the meeting on that. Well, thank everybody for coming and giving your input. And we will continue from here. It sounds like we have an agreement that we need help.
Somewhere between 9 and 10.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Here's the official end of the meeting.
Good. I was gonna call you.
So this was considered a workshop too?
This was actually a meeting.
Thank you
Very
very
good.
much.
You gotta close the meeting properly.
No, no problem. It was a lot more fun when I've seen them up
Say aye and
Now that it's up and up, it requires work and it's turned into a job.
All in favor?
Aye. I second it. I second it.
We're excited.